Well, hello there. Beginning to write book three, I came across some key points that at some point, most of us might want to consider. So I'm going to share them with you. Intense shame that keeps coming up can become toxic. There are ways to cope. Most people have experienced shame at some point, usually, due to doing something they feel is foolish or wrong. They may feel humiliated, sharing something vulnerable in front of others or defeated over like losing a sports match. But when these feelings become toxic shame, it can lead to emotions that can make you question your worth. Lingering toxic shame can adversely affect your life and potentially lead to harmful behaviors. There was a young girl I heard about, I remember in high school, the media. She was not popular and lucked out when she tried out for the cheerleading squad. She became obsessed when she was trying to get classmates to vote for her for student body president with no success. So, when a pageant came to town, she got excited to win for the attention and the prizes. I guess she was additionally fueled to show her high school that they underestimated her. Determined to win, she not only got the wardrobe requirements, but became convinced she needed to look perfect and that a great looking tan was necessary. She spent the couple of days before the pageant visiting several tanning salons, coaching them to give her, the first time try free in their tanning bed. By the next morning, she had begun to smell something awful. They checked into the hotel where the pageant was taking place that afternoon. She took a couple of showers, then she doused herself in perfume and deodorant spray, and then decided to take a nap before, going to the pageant. But I think it was about an hour later, she was found dead. Later, it was determined that she had basically cooked her insides, like a microwave. There are specific rules about the use, how often and how long to be in a tanning bed. And if hadn't been so driven by toxic shame, she may have stuck to one tanning salon and their rules for, use, let alone using several salons, claiming it was her first time and maybe even ignoring all of the rules altogether. Still today, many young people are obsessed with the idea that they need a tan to look good and still abuse use of tanning salons or, laying out in the sun for far too long, that are even diagnosed at a very young age of skin cancer, like even under the age of 21. Toxic shame is a debilitating feeling of worthlessness and self loathing. But coping strategies and techniques to reframe your emotions can help you overcome shame related feelings, of worthlessness. People who feel toxic shame often feel like they're not good enough, and are ashamed of themselves. This can lead to procrastination, perfectionism, and other self sabotaging behaviors. There are many horror stories of people becoming addicted to things like, Botox, crash dieting, and even plastic surgery, too, which we know can be deadly, or at the very least, much harder to reverse the outcome. And remember, if adults are addicted to these behaviors, then of course, untreated, they are also modeling for their children when they begin to have them, these vain obsessions. So I will not mention names, but I cringe, and it hurts my heart even, of a famous woman who clearly had way too much face work. And then years later, I see her adult daughter looking like she was doing the same. And It isn't, one, but many, and even not famous, not even able to afford it. But people, they are doing everything close to selling their soul to put together the money for a surgery they don't even need, but are convinced they will look better. So, in turn, that it's then going to help them feel better too. Sadly, for many, the result is not happy, but they fake it for fear of society judgment or falling from like this invisible grading scale of social norm. Or worse, completely isolate themselves to avoid a look, or gossip. Childhood abuse, neglect, and other traumatic experiences can cause toxic shame and make us believe, we are not good enough. This lasting and intense internal shame often develops in childhood when we are still developing a sense of self and are most susceptible to critical messages from parents, teachers, and other adults about ourselves. People with toxic shame internalize these critical messages and often begin to believe they are inadequate, even, or like, bad people. Often, when we feel our behavior is shameful, we tend to hide the evidence of our crime, even. Some common characteristics of shame based behavior would be things like, feeling worthless often, or worrying what others, think about you all the time, or being afraid to look stupid, too. Also, perfectionism in response to fearing failure, constant negative self-talk or talking bad about others, then feeling angry even in response to shame triggers. So to be clear, ordinary shame is a feeling in response to wrongdoing or thinking something you believe is immoral. Usually ordinary shame dissipates in a few days and is tied to only one specific event. Unlike ordinary shame, toxic shame is a chronic feeling of worthlessness inside you. People may not know they have toxic shame because it isn't always, felt constantly. But intense shame can come flooding back the moment someone is triggered. The following criteria differentiates uh, toxic shame, the differential, excuse me, from ordinary shame anyway. So, negatively impacted sense of self, intense and longer lasting shame, ongoing feelings, inadequacy, constant negative inner dialogue, the thinking, I'm a bad person instead of I did a bad thing, or avoidance of future shame can be, triggered by thoughts, not just an external event. Unfortunately, toxic shame can manifest physically and psychologically. Intense shame can trigger the body, to secrete stress hormones, even, which can cause symptoms like, low self esteem, depression, anxiety, oversleeping, or inability to sleep, stomach pain, overeating, or loss of appetite, eating disorders, substance use disorders, and codependency. Toxic shame can feel debilitating, but it doesn't have to last forever. While there is no one size fits all approach, there are steps you can take to begin healing and managing shame. First, understand that toxic shame impacts how people think about and treat themselves because many with toxic shame try to avoid embarrassment or, a shame trigger. Toxic shame also robs them of many life choices and joys. Kind of makes me think of a term, come to think of it. Um, Neuroticism, similar to a trait I have explained before, hypochondriac. If I put it into a sentence to first introduce it, I would be say something like, a neurotic person would be, I wasn't going to be labeled as a hypochondriac or a neurotic, which is having caused by or related to basically neuroticism. Neuroticism, excuse me, or to be a neurotic is described as, I believe it's like a specific personality trait associated with your negative, emotions. It is one of the big five traits. I do know that. And individuals with high scores on neuroticism are more likely than average to experience such feelings, more extreme, of the worry, the fear, the anger, envy, pessimism, guilt and loneliness. Being the term a neurotic means, you're afflicted by neurosis. It describes like the person having their mental, their emotional, and their physical reactions um, to be more outwardly and I'd say drastic or irrational. And its root, a neurotic behavior is an automatic, it's even an unconscious, excuse me, behavior, or effort even to manage their deep anxiety. So generally, the person is overly critical, perfectionism that gets in the way of progress. An outsized reaction to a minor problem, such as, road rage or maybe someone crying because dinner was burned and couldn't be eaten. Neurotic shows a core personality trait, though, characterized by emotional instability. It exists on a continuum, which means that person can be, real high and then real low. Many neurotic people find it even hard to switch, off and on, and often overthink even situations. Overthinking health concerns is one of the most common examples of a neurotic behavior, because a neurotic person may talk frequently about something that they feel is even medically wrong with them, despite having, a diagnosis, even. So, I want to close with um, so often, my point was toxic shame fuels neurotic behavior, but by regaining a more positive sense of self separate from the shame usually caused by poor childhood treatment is possible. The second step is coping and healing even from toxic shame, and to take notice of it if and when. I think a clinical therapist once said if we want to heal from it, we have to acknowledge it and, feel our feelings. It is also important that we do this in a non judgmental way. The shame is there, and it's not wrong that it is. Third, recognize your triggers. Perhaps particular people or even thoughts about yourself cause you to feel shame. Consider journaling, the times you feel bad and see if it, begins to help. You notice a pattern of onset, as you reflect. Uh, could it be certain events, situations, people, or even phrases that brought up shame? You could be watching a TV show. Once you know your triggers, you can learn to avoid them or build coping strategies, right? Fourth step, begin to then challenge and reframe even your thoughts. Because shame can feel so intense, it forces you to react. Consider pausing and questioning your thoughts before they snowball into extreme, viewpoints or intensity. While you are sitting with your thoughts and they become negative uh, based, ask yourself, do I really believe that, or is this really true? Um, you can begin to re examine your thoughts and reframe with the technique of both asking and answering even your own questions and writing down both so you can reflect on them later as well. Examples would be things like, I'm feeling this way, or, remember that would be number one, acknowledging. uh, than where you are or what is happening. Where did it come from, or when did it start? Even that is number two, recognizing your triggers. Then is there evidence that what you have or think is true? That's is number three, challenging your thoughts. Then use actual evidence to construct a positive thought. Uh, you're then doing number four, right? Reframing your thoughts. This technique may help you replace negative thoughts with the more positive ones that you even come up with yourself. Remember, it's your journal, so you can continue to do as little or as much as you want. You can also reflect back, change things, even apply how you want to go about seeing and feeling more of what you do want, or even who with, too. Practicing compassion involves loving yourself and accepting love and kindness from others too. The more we practice this, the more likely we can heal even from the toxic shaming. Self love takes time and doesn't come overnight, but exploring positive traits with yourself can help you regain your self worth. Consider jotting down your positive characteristics in a journal or on a notepad, or sticky note near your computer, even as if you were speaking to a friend. They may be helpful to read, whenever you feel a negative thought arising. If you are experiencing toxic shame, talk with someone. That can help too, get another perspective. It is important to address any emotional distress for yourself and the people who love and care about you. A therapist, even, or a friend can help you develop coping strategies to manage your emotions. It also can help you explore the root of your shame to heal, even from whatever your original trauma was. Toxic shame is a painful experience, but you can manage the symptoms and cultivate, even new thinking habits. Recognizing shame based thoughts and challenging them takes practice too. But the good news is learning coping techniques and treating yourself with compassion can dissolve toxic shame. I can say for sure that the greatest obstacle to helping people learn, heal, grow, and cultivate even loving relationships with themselves and others is toxic shame. This soul eating emotion tries to persuade you that you are less than human, or that you should somehow be more than human, even that you don't deserve to have needs, or that you should be above having them at all. It's fascinating how the same emotional wound can polarize people into either, I'd say, self loathing or even grandiosity, both under and over achievement alike. These one down and one up positions, tend to make it difficult to form secure bonds even with people with equal partners. It is also my belief that every self destructive addiction is shame in a getaway car, and that perfectionism is shame in a prom dress. The poet Rumi once wrote, "Your task is not to seek for love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it." Shame is exactly such a barrier. In fact, wasn't it Bren Brown who once said, "Shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are um, flawed and therefore unworthy of love, belonging, and connection," she says. Now, I'm saying though, I believe healthy shame is permission to be human. And healthy shame originates from trauma and childhood because, a child that is being abused by its parents doesn't stop loving its parents, it stops loving itself. As soon as we start remembering that and begin some simple steps forward, we can begin to feel and give love both to ourselves and each other. Choose to not work from the no factory. Instead, find yourself willing to come from a place of yes. There, you too can reclaim even your peace of mind. All right, guys, that's all for today. Hope that helps. Bye.